Thank you. I'm very happy to speak just after Jean Guichard, not only because we have been friends for a long time, but also because, as we will see, we share a bibliography, we share many common interests, we share values, and also because we're both attracted by the challenges that the world of research proposes us every day. But we're also attracted by theory and by trying to find a meaning in what we do as scholars, as counselors, as people interested in vocational guidance. Thank you, Jean, for preparing the ground for my presentation. Today, dealing with people that need help in choosing a job and in building their life is becoming more and more difficult, as we are forced to deal with complex problems and constructs which are even difficult to define. In particular, I'm thinking of adaptability, which will be discussed on Saturday by the friends that Professor Duarte managed to convince to be here. I'm thinking of career preparedness, understood as a state of vigilance toward the threats that can be made to personal and working life. And I'm thinking of resilience, understood essentially as the ability to resist and recoup energies, confidence and coping strategies, especially when facing demanding challenges that can threaten the stability, the vitality, or the development of individuals and groups. All these constructs have a marked connection in common with the environmental and contextual characteristics, both past and present, although they are decidedly oriented toward the future, toward what could happen in the future. Between the present and the future, there are our wishes, our interests, our self-efficacy beliefs, our objectives, our agency, and our hope. The idea of future once brought to mind progress, bettering of life conditions, opening up of prospects and possibilities. Today, when thinking of the future, many are those that are prey to discouragement, to dismay, to anguish. And it is this that many young people feel, and also many of the people that we deal with from a professional point of view also feel. These sensations and these unpleasant feelings are also due to the diffusion of pessimism and the conviction that it will be very difficult to overcome the crisis that is enveloping different parts of the world, that it will be very difficult to contain its terrible effects and avoid that it might be followed by a definite catastrophe, as Alain Touraine has foreseen. The current economic crisis, I think, is not only and will be not only the cause of many painful effects on the social from the social perspective, but it will also manage to make institutions less effective and less efficient, and also it will cancel out much of the balance that we have painfully reached in the post-industrial era of the 20th century. But I wonder, the professional people, the practitioners that engage in future and in the future work, are they aware of this? What do they think of it? Do they think that they are adequately equipped to continue to work and deal with work and the future? And the training the university offer, can it really promote in future counselors the necessary competencies? And can it really instill confidence and hope? It is essentially this that I will focus on in my presentation. I will do it by proposing some reflections and some data that we have collected and we have been discussing within our laboratory and within our research groups. The thoughts and the questions that I will bear in mind are basically three. I will start by wondering if it is still possible to predict the work of the future, and for how many this possible prediction can be really feasible. I will ask myself what characterizes today the professionals that engage in work and are interested in the future. And lastly, I will wonder what could be the profiles of those that in future will engage in vocational guidance and career counseling. Considering all this, the first thing that I think we should do is perhaps to admit that we ourselves really know very little about the future, and that it will be more and more difficult to predict it with sufficient precision, and even more difficult to determine it as we would like to do. The only thing that we can say with some sort of certainty is that neither our fathers nor ourselves have done what's necessary to allow the new generations to represent the future in a positive way to themselves. We, in other words, are at least responsible of many failings, of the failures of all those promises that, because of selfishness, of individualistic interests, we did not keep. And it is indeed the shortcomings, they are these, the shortcomings, that today we find at the basis of the concerns that many young people feel with particular intensity. Among these concerns, there is the conviction that work from a right for everyone is becoming a privilege for the few. That decent work which is meaningful, if not attractive and pleasant, from work like ours, for example, will be destined to very few, and it will be attributed not necessarily considering the merits of the people that would like to carry it out. Some research recently carried out at Larios shows that it is again becoming particularly predictive, the social, cultural and economic variable of where people come from, of the people that make the choices both at educational and professional level. We hoped that this plague had been completely eradicated, at least in some countries, but it does not seem so. Also, the right to well-being and to health for everyone is really decreasing a lot, as is the idea that it is possible to pursue sustainable and fair development in every part of the world. Too many are the young people that about the future say, well, no, I don't think about it. There's nothing to think of. I'm concerned enough with the present. The problem is not the uncertainty for the future. The real problem is the uncertainty and the fuzziness of the present. It is thoughts like these that we more and more frequently happen to hear. And we should not be surprised about this, because these young people are continually told, and we do it in our universities too, that in the future the greatest value will be attached to innovation, invention, discovery, both economic and scientific or technical, to the original, to the never seen, to the excellencies. But to all those people that will not be able to produce innovations and inventions, that will not be able to be excellent, and they will be the greatest majority, what we can propose to them? If we continue to say that the likelihood of success and inclusion will be definitely low for the greatest part of the normal Gaussian curve of the young population, for that does not have the cultural instruments which are particularly sophisticated to become effectively original or particularly creative, how can we expect they show enthusiasm and wish for the future? From the same point of view, also the work of those that will want to deal with the future of the, shall we say, normal people, of those that almost certainly will have to do with the future not so comprehensive and with very little solidarity. Will the work of these people still exist? What will it be like? Those that will not confined to being simply, as we say, headhunters or the selectors of excellencies, will they still with their work find themselves relevant from a social point of view, or will they feel satisfied at the individual level? And how demanding and lacking in satisfactions will be working in favor of the future with people they consider it particularly threatening, or that are not able to represent it in a positive way? Perhaps we should start with trying to make the present more attractive, as like it was suggested in Italy more than 20 years ago by Leccardi, the immediate present, the here and now, is very important, and it has a much more marked weight than both the past and the future. Perhaps, in a more realistic and concrete way, if we wish to really deal with the future, we should, more humbly, start to consider as it is possible to utilize the present at best, and within the present also the everyday life should be kept, should be saved, should be invested, should be made to produce something as if it were an actual economic resource. When there are factors of uncertainty about the consequences of one's own decisions and of one's own actions, and it is impossible to control success and failure, the modern individual should recognize himself or herself limited abilities of calculation, at least in the long term, limited abilities to foresee and plan in the very long term. And we are interested in building up, constructing the life of these individuals. And it is following these reasonings, or this type of reasonings, that in the last few years, searching for meanings and values seems to have been transferred from the dimension of the future to the dimension of the present. The present, which is a time, after all, little noble, little aristocratic, as some philosophers used to say, because it's nothing but a bridge between the past and the future. The present nowadays is beginning to be requalified. It's beginning to enjoy glories that it did not have. However, this provokes the destruction of the idea itself of future. In fact, it would seem that the present is today the only dimension of time that is frequently without discomfort, and on which without difficulty our attention and our ability of analysis focuses on. In this perspective, not the future, but the extended present, a sufficiently brief extent of time that does not escape human and social control, but also long enough to allow planning, would become the new time of the human action, but also of vocational guidance, of career education, of career counseling. Even if we are happy with dealing with the future which is very near, or a dilated present, we should in any case equip ourselves with new ways of analysis and prediction, but which should also be spurred by the hope that it is possible to realize our objectives in the face of everything. It is possible to realize our aspirations, satisfy our wishes, and also, as far as we are concerned from a professional point of view, to believe possible to help people do all this. Some indications Augustine of Hippo had already given us with that sentence that we used as a slogan of this conference. Other indications we are given by another important and more contemporary thinker, Ernst Bloch, who invites us not to give up our dreams and not to give up our daydreams. Life of all men is full of daydreams, says Bloch. A part of these dreams is only an incipient escape, albeit exhaustive. It is also prey for people that want to cheat us, but another part is stimulating. It does not allow that we are happy with the nasty present. It does not allow us to be quitters. This other part of the dreams, or the daydreams, has in its core hope, and this is the beauty of it. The beauty of it for most of us, at least. Hope is teachable. It can be taught. Perhaps, given the times that we are living, it is indeed this, ultimately, the aim of our job. But to pursue it, we should be able to contrast also the idea, which is I think, irrational that some sad and unhappy economists of today, together with some thinkers of the past, try to instill in our new generations, telling them that you must be modest, you must moderate your wishes, you must decrease the threshold of your ambitions rather than heighten your expectations, your hopes. These pompous thinkers have even tried to convince us that it is impossible to become rich only if we are poor of wishes. But what are the professionals that deal with the future of people today? What are our practitioners like today? How are they living the tensions and the contradictions and difficulties of these times? Within the International Hope Research Team and within our laboratory, we have asked ourselves many times this. Today I will focus on some results, which are still preliminary, of two investigations that they are still underway, and they are becoming interesting for professionals with different competencies that work together with people that need help. In these studies, we usually resort to both qualitative and quantitative measurements that refer especially to these variables. The objectives that these practitioners consider for their own professional growth, and how much confidence and hope they actually have for their working future. To professional career self-efficacy, to professional competencies, to collaborative abilities, to the possibilities of managing the difficulties of their clients, to the ability of building hope and optimism in their clients, to their own realization and professional satisfaction, to their own resilience, and obviously to their hope and their optimism. The instruments that we have used have been translated in different languages and have been utilized in several investigations, also in cross-cultural ones. Investigations aiming at studying in depth the role that these dimensions have, and to determine the differences both within the different help professions, practitioner in career counseling, teachers, psychotherapists, educators, rehabilitators, social operators, and both in cultural realities that are also very different in Europe, in Asia, Africa and South America. Here I will just propose some reflections. The first will focus on the results that we have obtained following a cluster analysis that we have recently conducted, considering the self-evaluations of a group of vocational guidance practitioners and career counselors employed in different services, especially in the northeast of Italy. The second reflections that I will give you will refer to the effects that we could recognize to hope, to optimism, to self-efficacy, to resilience about the way of conceiving one's profession and one's own tendency to build hope in those that are looked after by these professionals, especially as regards the future and as regards work. In our cluster analysis, we have involved 572 professionals coming from different regions of northern Italy, as already said. The cluster analysis has allowed us to determine 4 different groups of professionals. The most numerous group collects about 35% of participants in our study and is made up of professionals, 200 in number, that we have defined pessimistic and disappointed. Although they are satisfied with their wages, with the financial side of their work, they seem to have a little positive vision of their profession from the professional point of view. They don't seem to see the glass either half full or half empty. They seem to be just in between that. Their working commitment from what we managed to see through qualitative analysis, is confined to what is strictly necessary, without specific objectives of growth and without particular investments about bettering, improving their profession. They seem neutral, indifferent practitioners who, although they believe sort of average career self-efficacy beliefs, cannot build confidence and hope in their customers and their clients, and even less to adequately cope with the difficult situations that these clients encounter. Discussing of this group in our meetings at the Larios, the stereotyped image came to mind of the conventional and neutral employee that does his or her minimum without guilt and without particular shortcoming, but at the same time without deserving particular praise and without showing signs of enthusiasm. If we think towards the challenges that our work involves us in, this kind of colleague seems irrelevant, impotent, not certainly able to shake up that great number of people that today have great difficulties in trying to do something to build up their career, their life. In our services, and especially in the public services, the workers of these kinds are unfortunately many, about more than a third, and I think they are really too many. The second group is composed of about 27% of our subjects, 154 individuals. It is made up of people who are tendentially optimistic, that have a good amount of career self-efficacy beliefs, and that have positive feelings toward the work that they are carrying out. They think also that they are able to help those who have difficulties in choosing and difficulties in constructing their own future. These practitioners are supportive, they manage to encourage, to build hope and confidence, although at the same time they appear realistic and moderate. And for these reasons we have defined them moderately supportive, optimistic and realistic workers. The third group collects 21% of participants, 120 individuals, and we have considered them very positive, optimistic and resilient, because tendentially they believe that more positive than negative things can happen, and this also in moments of difficulty and uncertainty. They are colleagues that know how to invest energies and resources in pursuing their own objectives, and that believe that they have the necessary strategies to pursue them. On the professional side of things, they are satisfied with their job. They consider it a job that has a great value, socially useful and sufficiently prestigious. These people also consider themselves able to establish positive relationships with colleagues, and they recognize themselves the ability to build hope and confidence also in those customers that show discomforts and difficulties. They themselves appear actually resilient, able to face also from a professional point of view and from a personal point of view situations of discomfort and stress. From a social point of view, we wish really that it is these colleagues that can look after the people that have the greatest difficulties on how to choose and project their future. Unfortunately, there are few, whereas the people in difficulties are many. From this point of view, the most unfortunate people should be very fortunate to be able to intercept this kind of professional. The fourth group is the least numerous one and collects about 70% of our participants, 97 individuals. The people that belong to this group are decidedly pessimistic towards the future, and they have low career self-efficacy. On the working part of things, they believe they are not well equipped and they are not able to deal with situations of difficulty that many of their customers present, or with the stress that they might encounter in carrying out a job that they perceive as little pleasant. They also seem to attribute very little prestige and relevance to the activity that they carry out. About the likelihood that these people can be supportive, can be able to help other people that are really in difficulty, they can instill hope and confidence in those that do not have any, or to be considered capable of focusing on the future of these people. Well, there's not much we can say. Perhaps it should be them, first of all. They should seek the help of a professional of career counseling, and possibly someone belonging to that group of colleagues that we have defined as very positive, optimistic and resilient. Because even to have to do with the workers of this type and to supervise the activities that they do, really it's an extremely difficult enterprise. In reflecting over these profiles and on the consequences that we could consider about the training and supervision that we should offer and guarantee them, we also asked ourselves which is the role carried out by the dimensions that are at the center of attention of this conference: hope and resilience, first of all. We have looked for an answer about this question, trying to by using structural equation models. The one that we thought was the best fitting with our data is shown in the following graph, which shows the direct and indirect effects that would exist between the dependent and independent variables that we have considered. I think it is particularly important, first of all, to consider the direct effect that optimism seems to have about the way in which our professionals represent their own work, that is, the thoughts that they have about the recognitions they can obtain, and the increase in the future of their professional competencies. And this is the first. The second is the effect about the propensity to consider themselves able to build confidence and hope in their own customers, their own clients. As can be seen from what is in the graph, we cannot minimize the role of the mediation that is really done by career self-efficacy, beliefs and resilience. The first, career self-efficacy beliefs, thanks to the indicators that we have used, can be operationally described in terms of ability to use in a competent way adequate procedures of assessment and treatment, and as abilities of coping with professional stress by resorting to efficacious coping strategies. This seems to be the present. But what could we say about the professionals of the future? What should they be like? What can their profiles be like? Those that will engage in the problems of choice and in the planning and in professional planning will first of all find themselves more and more often operating in working and educational contexts that will be increasingly characterized by marked temporariness and flexibility. In addition, differently from what is happening still in Europe, they will be used, shall we say, employed, especially in the private sector, and with occasional collaborations with public service. This could be a resource, but it could also be a problem. All this will certainly raise problems and will tax their adaptability and their resilience. Trying to anticipate and foresee the competencies that these practitioners should have has led many colleagues and also some important international organizations and associations to think about different lists and manifestos of competencies and abilities that we can consider more or less standard ones. They are attempts that could have had a sense and a reason years ago. I think that today they cannot tell us anything about, or cannot tell us much about the future, because they essentially propose a resume of the behaviors and of the competencies considered useful in the past, or in the best of cases still present in our services. But in fact they describe what we needed or what we need, not what we will need in the future. The future, for example, will require of those that will deal with the choice and professional planning to be also able to interact and understand different and multidisciplinary languages, like those of the science of health, the science of education, economics, sociology, science of communications, anthropology, etc. But this is not enough. Besides doing things with competencies, the practitioner of the future will have also to have important sensitivities and be ready to witness the adhesion to a series of values that are decidedly different from those typical of consumerism, of competition, of being first at all costs. Also Bandura, some time ago, had already told us that university training must look after human values more, must be more interested in meanings, in cultural prospects and perspectives, and in civil involvement. And all this must be strengthened at least as much as knowledge. Of all this, it is obviously difficult to find operational definitions in those lists, also the international ones that I just mentioned above. For these reasons, instead of considering a balance, a standard balance of knowledge and competencies these practitioners, it would be possibly more useful, but certainly more stimulating, to hypothesize a sort of portfolio of knowledge and competencies, in progress, however, because accompanying the professional career of everyone, this would make it easier to monitor individual projects that have been formulated, the reading of a narration of diverse identities and diverse professional stories. This portfolio would allow also the analysis of abilities that in turn have been dealt with in terms of objectives to pursue, training pathways that was considered opportune to pursue their achievement. This portfolio would document also to what extent these colleagues are able to self-regulate their professional behaviors, how much they are ready to accept and invest in their education, in their training along all their professional life. If on the other side, these same practitioners require clients to develop self-management and personal agency, to become active and productive in different contexts, and to be able to sustain their own self-determination, well, they should be the first to have developed these characteristics and competencies very well, and also to allow them to be certified. These professionals, in addition, will not have to be happy with being simply a mediator, to be neutral. They will become persuaders, they will become facilitators of reflexivity, but also they should be able to have a role of coach and to accompany in the phases of exploration of the world of work and of different transitions all their clients. In other words, they will have to be able to deal with difficult situations, difficult to analyze and difficult to support. If all of us, on the other hand, perceived our problems as simple and easy, we would not certainly have the need to seek the help of specialists. Also, ourselves then, as happens also in other sectors of well-being and health, also we should accept the fact that there aren't and there will not be easy things to deal with. Or, more simply, as one of my children taught me, the easy things have already been done by others. We are left with the difficult ones. For these reasons, I consider superficial and without a solution to think, as is happening also in some European countries, and as ISFOL is continuing to propose in Italy, to different levels of competence, of professionals of vocational guidance or career counseling that can be first, second or third choice, or to think of different manuals that include the different tasks that these people should do, and emphasizing sometimes the giving out of information, sometimes the development and the education to abilities, and sometimes the real actual career counseling. And we are left with the difficult things to do. And this is what happens, for example, when also in a preventive perspective we wish to deal with those that do not ask for help. They don't come to our surgeries, to our offices. They don't feel a situation of distinct discomfort. Unfortunately, they're not in difficulties yet. Prevention must focus on these individuals, also of these individuals, as well as of those people that consider our profession a job which is not really all that serious. Our activity, the work of the psychologist, very often enjoys, so to speak, a terrible reputation, especially among those people that perhaps would be the first to need psychological helps. We should be able to offer them other possibilities. And tomorrow we shall certainly hear some very interesting things that some speakers will tell us in this room. And we are left with the difficult things to do, as when we wish to help people that belong to the so-called net generation, that generation made up by people that don't work and don't study, by people that belong to what is being defined as a suspended generation, with an interrupted future, because they are not able to determine it, to see it, and even less to plan it. These people perhaps would prefer group interventions, those online, or perhaps they would like to be helped exclusively in finding a job, helped to finding resources, supports, alliances. In any case, these people will have to be taught hope, as Bloch said. We'll have to take them to reflect, to read again their critical events, their stories, their difficulties, reminding them that the difficulties of their critical events, their stories, they can all serve them for reasoning, for reflecting. Stumble along, somebody said, so you will be able to reflect. These people will have to be taught that their things, their discomforts are not only theirs, that their actions and their things, their questions are not things and questions that are public and themselves only for them, but they are public questions and things, social questions and things. They are an intertwining of people, of stories, of approaches, of instruments, of paradigms belonging to specific cultural and social settings. It is up to us, and surely this is a difficult thing, to oppose the widespread tendency to folding back on themselves, staying within themselves. We have really, we must do what we can to stimulate them to come out of their shell, to come out of their individualism. The practitioner of the future that I have in mind will therefore will therefore be above all an agent of change, a facilitator of reflection and inclusion. The professional, the practitioner of the future will also have to be, in any case, oriented to the present, to contexts, and he or she will have to invite people to be outraged for the injustices that exist, to stimulate curiosity and creativity, participation and personal empowerment. To promote all this, the practitioners of the future will have to become, shall we say, will have to provoke, will have to persuade. They will be able to shake up all those people that are resigned because fear distrust and excessive anchoring to the present really make people not want to have a future. And indeed, this should really be very close to them, because they will not want vocational guidance and career counseling and career education. The workplaces of these professionals, be it their offices, but also and more often the streets and the communities, will have to be transformed in places of sharing, in cultural places in which all the different knowledge should converge, considering that there is the same idea underlying it, which is necessary to rethink the economic structures. And we will hear what an important economist has to say tomorrow about this. As I say, a rethinking of the social and economic structures, because the supply and demand of work, we must admit it, do not meet, and they will not meet so easily in the future either. If on the one side we feel the need to refound our disciplines, also those of others should do the same thing and should do their part, starting from economics, which should become more open and pluralistic, should be connecting again to history, to sociology, to ethics, to politics, and to all the other human sciences. We will have a future as researchers and as professionals interested in the future if, first of all, we will stop being neutral and stop being indifferent. This is my litany. We will have a future only if we will manage to tell ourselves that indifference, neutrality have had their time. Indifference and neutrality have stimulated in many negative feelings, even close to contempt and hate. And this had already been said by a great and controversial thinker and an Italian citizen who said some decades ago, and he said it clearly so that it could be understood by everyone, the people, the population, but also by those people that in those years were holding power. And he said, I hate people who are indifferent. And I think that living means being partisans, staying on the part of. Who really lives cannot but be a citizen and a partisan. Indifference is lethargy, is parasitism, is cowardice. It is not life. And so, Gramsci said, I hate those who are indifferent. Those that in future will engage in these difficult things, in the things that we are discussing in this conference, will have to openly show their anger and their indignation for injustices, for things that are not done well, for those things that are advantageous only for the few. For example, for those that call on others to do all those things. Those that in future will engage in these things and will help the people that do not have and will not have a wish for the future, will have to show that they are partisans, that they are, without buts and without ifs and without buts, on the side of these individuals. I wish to thank you for your attention, but above all, I wish to thank you for your non-indifference toward the quality of the existence of individuals, of their environment,